I was working the overnight shift at a gas station just outside of Safford, Arizona, off Route 191. That part of the state is nothing but endless desert, scattered truck stops, and the occasional mountain range silhouetted against the horizon. After dark, it's quiet in a way that makes you feel like the world's already ended and you're just now realizing it. I'd picked up the shift last minute. The usual night guy, Jesse, hadn't shown up. My manager said he quit over the phone and didn't explain why. I should have been more curious, but I needed the paycheck. The place was old, real old, the kind of gas station that still had faded Coca-Cola signs from the 80s and an out-of-order payphone that buzzed for no reason sometimes. The desert air outside was dry, still, and filled with that faint electric hum you only notice when there's nothing else around. Around 1:40 a.m., a white van pulled in. Not the family kind, this thing was rusted, matte paint flaking, with no visible license plate. It coasted up to pump 3, then just stopped. Nobody got out. I watched on the security monitor. The driver's seat was just visible under the flickering canopy light, but all I could make out was a dark shape. They didn't move, didn't even shift. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I started getting a weird feeling in my chest, like when you're being watched from behind but there's no one there. I told myself it was nothing, but then the motion lights out by the dumpsters flicked on. No wind, no animals, nothing there. At 2:04 a.m., I stepped outside. The air felt off, like the temperature had dropped 5 degrees in the time I opened the door. I walked slowly toward the van. As I got closer, I could hear the soft purr of the engine, but the headlights weren't on. It was just sitting there, like it had been waiting for something, or someone. Then the passenger side window rolled down about 2 inches, and that's when I heard it. A whisper, barely audible, like it was scraping up through sandpaper. I froze. I stepped closer and looked in through the slit in the window. What I saw chilled me more than the desert air ever could. A woman was sitting in the passenger seat, eyes wide, mouth gagged with duct tape, and shaking her head no in tiny frantic motions. Her eyes met mine for a second. And then the van's headlights flashed on, blinding white. The engine roared and it peeled out, tires spitting gravel, tearing down the empty highway with a shriek. I ran back inside, hands shaking, and called 911. I gave them everything. The van's make, the pump number, even which direction it had gone. I copied the surveillance footage to a USB stick and waited for the cops. I thought that was it, but at exactly 3:07 a.m., the van came back. Only this time, it was a burned-out husk. It rolled silently into the same spot, pump 3. No engine sound, no lights, just the crunch of metal on asphalt as it coasted in like it had never left. It was charred black. The entire front end looked melted, the windshield completely caved in. One of the tires was shredded all the way down to the rim. Smoke, actual smoke, was rising off the hood, but there was no one inside. So I locked the doors and ducked behind the counter, calling 911 again, this time in a whisper. When the sheriff's deputies finally showed up about 15 minutes later, the van was still there, but everything had changed. No smoke, no heat, just rust. They opened it up, and well, nothing, no bodies, no license plate. The inside was stripped, completely empty. No seats, just scorched metal and desert dust. And then one of the deputies, a guy who looked like he'd seen some things, pulled me aside. Told me he'd seen this van before, 3 years ago, in a junkyard near Bisbee, about 200 miles south. It was burned out when they found it. The body of a woman was discovered inside, unidentified. Cold case. They said the van had never been moved since. I gave them the USB with the footage, but the next day they told me it was corrupted. Nothing on it. I didn't last another night on that shift. I told the manager I was done. He didn't argue, just nodded like he already knew. But I still think about that woman. I still hear that whisper some nights, "Help me," just faintly when the wind brushes up against my window. And here's the worst part. Every now and then I check the gas station's live cams, and sometimes around 3:07 a.m., that same van shows up, still no plates, still no driver, still parked at pump 3.
It happened last October. I was driving home from a friend's wedding in Tucson, heading back north to Flagstaff. It was after midnight, and honestly, I'd underestimated how tired I'd be. So I pulled into a small gas station just off a rural exit outside Camp Verde. It was one of those older two-pump setups with a flickering overhead light and a tiny convenience store attached. No other cars around, just silence and a buzzing light above the door. I didn't even plan to get out, just park, text my friend that I was fine, and grab some water from my back seat. But while I was typing, my low fuel light blinked on, so I figured I'd get out, fill up quickly, and keep going. That's when I noticed it. A white van pulled in and parked at the far end of the lot. No one got out. I figured maybe they were doing the same thing, checking directions or making a call, but honestly, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I finished fueling, then looked over again. Still, no one got out of the van. Windows tinted black. I got back into my car and locked the doors. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't get out again." I stared at it, confused. No one should have had my number, especially not here. I looked at the van. A figure was now visible behind the wheel, barely, just the faint outline of a man. "Who is this?" No reply. I turned the engine, ready to leave, but realized I hadn't paid yet. This station was old school. You had to pay inside. I sat there debating. My card was maxed out, so I'd used my last bit of cash at the pump. I had to go in and cover the rest or risk a stolen gas charge. So I made myself get out and walk to the store. The place looked closed, but the lights were still on. Inside it was empty. No cashier, no bell, just rows of dusty snacks and that humming fluorescent light. I waited at the counter for a full minute, called out, nothing. Then I heard something. The chime of the front door. Someone had come in. I turned. The guy from the van. Same hoodie, dark hair, sunglasses, at night. He didn't say a word, just stepped in slowly, looking around. I didn't wait. I ducked out the back door near the stockroom and bolted behind the building. I crouched behind a dumpster, heart pounding, when I heard footsteps coming around the corner. Slow, deliberate. Then my phone buzzed again, and there it was. You shouldn't have gotten out. That's when I realized something. My car lights were off. I mean, I always leave them on when I leave the keys in, but they were off now. He'd been in my car. I sprinted back around the front, fully ready to just drive off and deal with the cops later, only to see my front passenger door cracked open. I didn't even check. I jumped in, slammed the door, locked it, and sped out of that lot like my life depended on it. Because it probably did. 10 minutes later, I stopped at a lit-up love station near a busier highway. Inside, I told the clerk what happened. He looked concerned and told me to call the sheriff. While I waited, I went to grab a water bottle from my passenger seat. That's when I noticed the burn mark on the seat, a small black circle, still warm, like someone had pressed a cigarette into the cushion. I don't smoke. I didn't sleep much that week. Every sound outside my apartment made me check the peephole. I changed my locks, had a coworker walk me to my car after every shift, even bought a security camera for my front door, but nothing happened. Until Friday night, I was finally starting to relax. I ordered takeout, put on a movie, and honestly, I just forgot to check the door when the delivery guy arrived. I just grabbed the food, said thanks, and shut the door. An hour later, I remembered the security camera. I hadn't checked it since I installed it. I pulled up the app on my phone and froze. There were 2 videos saved. The first was the delivery guy. Normal, short. The second one was timestamped 20 minutes after I got the food. It showed a man walking up to my door, not knocking, not ringing, just standing there. For over 2 minutes he stood motionless, facing the door. Then he leaned in close, so close his face blurred the camera. He whispered something, and left. I turned up the volume and replayed it 4, maybe 5 times before I finally made it out. I liked your perfume better that night. It was 2 days before Christmas, and my husband Jimmy and I were driving through the empty roads of Arizona on our way to Salmon, Idaho, to visit my sister and niece. I hadn't seen her in months, and Christmas felt like the perfect time to reunite. The drive was supposed to take about 10 hours, but the weather had other plans. By the time we hit Chinle, Arizona, the fog was thick. Really thick, like you could barely see a few feet ahead of us. Jimmy slowed down, squinting at the road. The headlights barely broke through the mist. "I'll be glad when we get out of this," Jimmy muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. I nodded in agreement. It was already dark, and the eerie, ghostly fog made everything feel surreal. The stretch of road we were on was completely deserted, and the silence was unsettling. We hadn't passed another car in what felt like ages. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, we saw a flicker of red light through the fog ahead. A gas station. It seemed like a welcome sign, but there was something off about it. The lights were dim, flickering in and out. It wasn't a big station, just a small Speedway. But something about it felt wrong. Like it didn't belong here, in the middle of nowhere, in the thickest fog we'd seen all night. Jimmy didn't seem to think twice. He pulled into the lot, which was almost completely empty except for one old beat-up sedan parked near the pump. The place looked abandoned, like it hadn't been maintained in years. The lot was cracked, weeds growing through the pavement, and the building itself looked like it had seen better days. I glanced at Jimmy. "Are you sure this place is even open? It's a gas station. We need fuel." I didn't want to seem like I was overreacting, so I just nodded. But I felt uneasy. Something about this place didn't sit right with me. Still, I followed him inside. The door creaked as we stepped in, and I immediately noticed the strange silence. No background music, no beeping from registers or fridges. The fluorescent lights flickered above us, and the air smelled stale, like something had been rotting for years. It felt like we'd stepped into a time capsule from the 70s. There was a man behind the counter, tall, thin, with dark, sunken eyes. His face was pale, almost sickly, and he just stared at us without a word. His hands rested on the counter, long fingers tapping slowly, like he was waiting for something to happen. But his eyes never left us. "Just need $20 on pump 2. The man didn't respond. He just stood there staring. His lips twitched, but it wasn't a smile. It was like he was trying to remember how to make one. Jimmy glanced back at me, confused. I didn't know what to do either, so I started browsing the few items on the shelves. Most of the shelves were half empty, a few cans of soup, a couple of bags of chips, nothing that looked fresh. Suddenly I heard something, a soft dragging sound like something heavy was being pulled across the floor behind the counter. I froze. Jimmy didn't seem to notice. He was still talking to the cashier, who hadn't moved an inch. The dragging sound grew louder, more distinct. It was definitely coming from behind the counter. It wasn't like the normal sounds you'd hear in a store. It felt unnatural. I turned to look, my heart pounding in my chest. Behind the counter, something moved. I saw a pale, thin hand slithering out from beneath the counter, fingers dragging across the floor like it was searching for something. The fingers were unnaturally long, too long. No normal human hand could stretch like that. I swallowed hard and backed up, but I didn't say anything to Jimmy. I didn't want to sound crazy, but I was terrified. That hand, it wasn't right. Then I saw something in the corner of my eye. I glanced back at the shelves, and there was a figure standing at the end of the aisle. At first I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but no, it was there, just standing still, facing away from me. A tall figure, draped in a long coat, its body unnaturally rigid. I felt a chill run down my spine. I couldn't see its face. The figure was too still. I couldn't make out any details in the dim light, but there was a horrible sense of wrongness to it. I took a step back and bumped into a shelf, knocking a can of beans to the ground. The figure twitched. It wasn't a normal twitch. It was jerky, like a malfunctioning robot. Then it turned slowly, its head snapping toward me. That's when I felt a hand grip my arm. I gasped and whipped around. It was Jimmy. But the moment I looked at him, something felt off. His eyes were wide, too wide, his face pale. "Let's go," he said in a strained voice, pulling me toward the door. We didn't need any more prompting. I didn't even look back. We ran to the car, jumped in, and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely start the engine. Jimmy slammed his foot on the gas. We sped out of there without a word, the fog swallowing the station in the rearview mirror. The road was quiet again, the fog slowly clearing as we drove. We didn't stop to fill up. We didn't say anything until we got to a well-lit station hours later. I could still feel that cold, suffocating air from the Speedway gas station, the feeling that we had narrowly escaped something unnatural. When we finally talked about it, Jimmy told me he'd felt something off, too, like we weren't supposed to be there. But neither of us could explain the weirdness of the whole thing. A few days later, we mentioned it to a local in Salmon, someone who had lived in the area for years. We described the station, the fog, and the eerie feeling we'd both had. His face went pale. Speedway's been closed for decades. After a string of disappearances in the 80s, the place just stopped being a gas station. No one goes near it anymore. A chill ran through me as I realized something. We'd driven right past a place that had been abandoned for years, and the fog hadn't hidden it. It had covered it up. And now, I wasn't sure we'd ever get that eerie smile out of my head.